Not to be like overly dramatic, but I do think if I was put on this earth to do one thing and one thing only, it is probably to give extremely specific book recommendations. Proceeds to be dramatic. But honestly, there's no better feeling in this world than connecting someone with a book that they didn't even know they were looking for. You know? The best feeling in the entire world. Also, maybe my purpose. Hi, hello. It's nice to see you. I'm glad you could make it. It has been a hot minute since we've done another episode of extremely specific book recommendations. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is an extremely specific book recommendation? Really, it's up for interpretation. It is. Across all the boards, it is up for interpretation. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure game every single time. However, when it comes to my extremely specific book recommendations, say that 11 times fast. I've already done it. It's hard. I'll tell you it's hard. I don't necessarily mean like she gets hurt and he helps him, or like she's sad and he makes her feel better. I don't mean that. When I say extremely specific, I mean extremely specific, niche, weird, okay? That's kind of what we're working with. Like, I don't know, a book that definitely was written on May 14th, but takes place in the fall. A book that feels like The Color Yellow. Like I said, up for interpretation, okay? Now I'm gonna be totally honest with you. The idea of pulling 25 plus books off of my shelves right now felt not that fun. It felt like not what I wanted to do right now. So I thought, how else can I make this interesting? And I thought, podcast. Yeah, let's turn it into a podcast. So that is kind of what we're gonna be doing today. We're going to be doing some extremely specific book recommendations, but we're gonna be doing it in a chit-chatty style. And that's why there's a mic. Because it's kind of like a podcast. So if you want to put me on in the background and do other things, that's totally fine. If you want to explore, adventure, put me in your pocket, that's totally fine because you won't be missing anything visually. However, if you want to sit here, I will still try my hardest to make it more fun, hence the microphone. I don't really know what I'm doing. I just thought it'd be fun for us to do an extremely specific book recommendations video because if you didn't know, or if you're coming from TikTok and you do know, I have been doing this for the longest time on TikTok. This is probably my most long-standing series to date, and I haven't done it in the longest of long times. And I like it in this long-form style, and I'm kind of loving this podcast nature of it all. I feel like I'm just chatting with you. It's like we're on FaceTime, which is kind of what I'm always going for because I tend to overshare. So we won't be missing any of that today. Don't worry. I asked you a couple days ago for your extremely specific book recommendation. I need to stop saying it. I asked you guys for recommendations or extremely specific things that you were looking for in books the other day. So if you want to be a part of the next one, make sure to follow me over there. Just a silly little plug. I mean, you guys know what I'm doing day to day if you follow me on Instagram. Like I'm most active on my stories, if I'm honest. That being said, based on those, I've pulled like 25-ish. I want to say 25. I didn't count, but I think it was 25. Watch it be exactly 25 and I'm just like a genius. I stroked genius. I was counting in the back of my head to get to 25. I wasn't. However, if we have exactly 25, I think it's about 25. Say extremely specific book recommendations 12 times fast and then say the number 25 11 times. Without further ado, I feel like I know we've been rambling for too long. Sometimes I ask for these and they're not very specific, but you guys delivered 100% this time because they are extremely specific. And I will remind you right now, right here, these are my thoughts, my opinions. And by that, I mean, I just went with the first thing that came to my mind. They're books that I love that relate to the thing that you said, but in a lot of cases, it's just the first thing that came to mind because a book that feels like The Color Yellow, up for interpretation. You know what I mean? So we're going to sit here and we're going to chat books. Something you may or may not know about me, I struggle a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit, with my relationship with productivity. I feel like it definitely does shine through a little bit in my videos if you've seen my face before. However, I have a bit of a mental block when it comes to how I define productivity as a creative. And as much as I love to read, I can never get myself to sit down and really take a lot out of reading nonfiction or reading self-help, which led me to today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community made by creatives for creatives, which is why I feel like I resonate with them so much because every single class is led by someone who's become an industry expert and are so enthusiastic and excited to be sharing. There are thousands of classes in pretty much any creative category you can think of, whether that's illustration, photography, content creation, or more specifically in my case, productivity as a creative. I have personally been taking a productivity masterclass, principles and tools to boost your productivity. I feel like I've already taken so much out of this class. By the time that I got to the fourth lesson, the myth of I don't have time, I noticed myself sitting back being like, wait, that is a mentality that I have. And I feel like how you are talking about it, I am already learning how to develop a more healthy relationship with productivity. And if you're not sure where to start with Skillshare, they have designed learning paths, which are made up of hand-picked classes meant to be taken in order that build upon each other. And these classes are available in a range of experience level from beginner all the way up to advanced. So whether there's a certain creative skill you've been wanting to gain, or like me, you've been wanting to learn how to manage your time and productivity from someone who has their own industry expert experience on the topic, make sure to head to the link in my description because the first 500 people will be getting a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. A huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. And without further ado, let's get into our extremely specific book recommendations. I don't know if they're recommendations or just like matching in my head. But if you've been looking for this extremely specific thing or a book that'll make you feel this extremely specific way, maybe this is the video for you. Or maybe it's not. It's okay if it's not. Books to read when you feel like every MMC lately is just bleh and annoying. Okay, relatable. Part 1, 100% relatable. The two that I thought of immediately looking at my shelf. I feel like this answer might not be expected because I don't talk about this book all that often. And then I saw it on my shelf and I was like, I loved that. And I haven't talked about it in forever. Immortal Dark. Okay. The main male character in that book is not blah. No, he's the villain. He is the villain. And I kind of loved it. It didn't feel YA. I remember when Immortal Dark came out, there was a lot of discourse on whether it was good or not. And I loved it. I remember reading the reviews and being like, No, I don't agree. I had so much fun with that. And I liked that it was actually dark and both the characters were dark. Like it was dark across the board. We're basically dealing with a girl whose sister has gone missing and she's convinced that her sister has been taken by the vampires in this, it was a long time ago, been taken by this vampire society that's like this secret society situation that you can only get to if you get brought in by one of them. So she goes back to her house because there's houses in this world, okay? And by houses, I mean houses like clan, no. Houses, not like a physical house, even though it does have a physical house, but I mean like her family house, like by their last name. And there's only one vampire left, and it is in fact the male main character. And he is kind of like the biggest antagonist, and I lived for him because he was not bleh and annoying. I mean, he was infuriating, but not annoying. Also, I do have to say When the Moon Hatched, because the male main character in that book, I think about that book like it's my day job, but the way that he just was support in that book, the things that he did for her, the things that he let her uncover, the things he helped her with, no, I love him with everything in me. Remembering his name, I don't know that. However, I do remember how he made me feel, and it was not bleh, and it was not annoying. And I really could do a big list of this because I love a lot of male main characters, but these are two that maybe you haven't heard from me. That was my thought. So if you're looking for a male main character, maybe this will be the one for you. Just saying. Books for dealing with grief, but that are not self-help. My initial thought, and I always think this when I read this author's books, and I always give a warning when I read this author's books, but truly anything by Ashley Poston, her main characters have gone through some sort of grief and are going through some sort of grief and have gone through some sort of loss when the book is taking place and are dealing with it in the moment. And I do think if it's not presently happening, if you're a little bit healed from it, I think those books can be an incredible exploration of dealing with grief and learning about grief and just trying to navigate the world after having gone through grief. However, I do think if you're like actively going through it, they could just be triggering because I think you're reading about this fictional character that's going through a very real experience. I do think in retrospect, or when you're a little bit removed from it or like a little bit healed, they are so beyond impactful while also being beautiful, fun romances. So it doesn't feel like you're reading it because you're going through something and you want to be reading something that's going to help you through it. It's also just like a beautifully written book, but her characters' depictions of grief are very beautiful and impactful, and I do recommend them a lot to people in my life that are a little bit healed at least from their grief and they want to read about a character that kind of they can relate to, because I feel like that's what we're all kind of looking for, even if it's the not so great parts of life. Reading about characters that have gone through things that you're going through or feel emotions similarly to the way that you feel them or at the same time that you're feeling them can be impactful, even if it is a little bit hard. I do think if you're looking for a self-help book, I'm not your girl. I don't know the last. I think I read Atomic Habits in like 2022. I'm glad you're not looking for self-help. However, I do think dealing with grief and reading about characters that are going through grief can be really hard when you're in it. So proceed with caution. However, that is the recommendation that I give the most. A book that will rip your heart out, tear it to pieces, and then hand it back again. This is my favorite thing in the entire world. Is this a trope? Is this a micro trope? Because it's my favorite. I love it. I love a book that is going to take my heart out, tear it to shreds, throw it in a river, drive over it with a car, put me under a bridge, find me under the bridge, and then glue it back together. But the gluing it back together doesn't always happen. So this is like kind of a micro experience. You know what I mean? The two that I think of the most, well, just top of mind. I think you also have to remember that I have recency bias. So I am thinking of books that I've read more recently, more often than not. Conditions of Will. Yeah. I don't know about you. That book changed my life. Yeah. I think because I read it in one sitting, I noticed so much. I wouldn't have read it in a different way other than the fact that I didn't want that book to end. But George's story, Tessa really said, I'm going to write real life. It's going to feel so real. And I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I know I feel grateful. Emotionally traumatized for sure. Emotionally damaged 100%. However, the way that that book tears your heart to shreds, little pieces, teeny tiny little pieces, and then gives you like an ending that is so real and believable. But just, yeah, that book made me feel so many things. Georgia has been kind of abandoned by her family, and she's really close with one of her brothers, and there's 4 siblings altogether. 2 of them have adjective middle names, and 2 of them have noun middle names, and the 2 adjectives, because she's the 2 adjectives, her and her brother, have been sent away when they were really young. They grew up in like a very religious South Carolina town, and they just didn't really fit with their family's outside portrayal. There's a lot more to it than that. But now Georgia's dad has passed away, and she has to come home and go to the funeral, even though she like maybe has some unresolved feelings about him and like maybe kind of doesn't really care, you know what I mean? However, now that she is home, we meet Sam Penny, okay? It's insta-love, but people are saying that now in retrospect online, and I'm like, I guess it was, but I didn't notice in the moment. That's how good it was. Also, I just have to say, like, Say You'll Remember Me and Just for the Summer. Because those books, I'm a very core memories, memes for the memes kind of person. I'm very sentimental. I keep every single note that anyone has ever given me super sentimental, super, we need to be making memories all of the time. And like, this is gonna be something I remember for the rest of my life kind of person. So Say You'll Remember Me hit me really hard for that reason. I cried so much through that book. I think just because I really related to the sentiments of that book. And then Just for the Summer, God, girl. Yeah. Painful. Yeah. Abby Jimenez is amazing at taking the same issue and putting it on two different sides of the coin, and then having the characters reflect those two different sides of the coin and having it apply to their lives in different ways. Did I say anything? Did any of that make sense? No. But for Just for the Summer, the issue that it kind of dealt with and like dealing with familial relationships and like where to apply forgiveness while also having like one of the most gut-wrenching main character love situations ever. I do feel like it put my heart back together at the end, both of them, in a big way. So something with beautiful writing, but that is not soul crushing. I relate to that. Although I think I always would opt for the soul crushing aspect. I do love a little bit of a reprieve from the sobbing. You know, sometimes you do it day to day to day to day, and you're like, what's the point if I'm crying every single day? I mean, the point is to cry every single day. I love emotional devastation. Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. I thought that book was so beautifully written. You can tell it's her newest book. Like, I annotated the hell out of that book. However, it was mostly like dialogue about it that was really beautiful. Like, I loved the way that it was written. It was flowery, but not in like a flowery writing kind of way. It just like felt flowery. And then also I do have to say have a soul, because the writing style in that book, I love it so much. And it's beautiful and impactful and a fun, whimsical story that has emotional underlying themes and has a lot of themes that the author was going for in the book that you kind of underlyingly realize, but in retrospect, she's answered and said there were those themes in the book that were really impactful. But it's just like a fun, whimsical, beautifully written time. Like, the chapter names are written in this like beautiful cursive font, and the writing in the chapters feels like how that font looks. Was that too specific? Maybe. It might have been. However, beautiful writing, but not soul crushing. Maybe a tiny bit soul damaging, but not soul crushing. At least not for me. Is there a distinction between those two things? We just made one, I guess. A book that will bring back yearning. My favorite. I didn't even know I was looking for yearning until I started to experience the yearning, and I was like, wait, I've waited my whole life to watch these emotions through fictional characters. I say that about most emotions. However, yearning specifically, Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. That book, those two books. I haven't read on the series yet. I've read the first two. I will be reading on because I really want the next two stories. However, the yearning between Lara and Aaron, no, unlike anything else that I have ever read, that is yearning, because they are actually enemies and adversaries. Like, it really is done well, and the yearning is like somehow center stage. It really is. It's right front and center, while also being perfectly plot and politics driven. The world in the Bridge Kingdom doesn't really have any magic. Like, it's not like a magical fantasy world. However, it's not our world and it is fantasy, but the politics, the political intrigue in that book that matches perfectly with the romance. Like, I think when someone says romantasy, like a perfect mix of romance and fantasy and plot, I think of the Bridge Kingdom, because they're so perfectly mixed. It has such high stakes, but not in a magical, unrealistic kind of way. Lara's been training with all of her sisters since she was born to be married off to the king of Ithacanna, which is the Bridge Kingdom. There's basically like two continents, and they're connected by Ithacanna, which has the bridge. It literally has a bridge, and they are the Bridge Kingdom, and that's how you get goods from one side of the world to the other. And there was a treaty made that the princess of Meridriana, did I remember that correctly? It's something like that, was going to marry the prince of Ithacanna, and they would be king and queen of Ithacanna. It was this treaty that was made, this peace treaty. However, Lara has been training her entire life to infiltrate the Bridge Kingdom, because she has been told her entire life that they are awful and they are squeezing money out of everyone, and everybody in her kingdom is poor because they're not doing anything right. But when you get there, maybe that's not the case, and they both want to do the best things for their people. And it's just, I also have to say belladonna, because it's a relationship with the incorporeal existence of death. Yearning. No, it's so romantic. It's so beautiful and romantic and gothic, and it makes me feel so many things. However, books that feel like a warm hug. Okay. The one that comes top of mind the second that I saw this, Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. Somebody yell at me for having put off that book for so long, because it's a warm hug. It was beautiful. There was communication. There was boundary settings. It was just truly a warm hug. Your cup felt so full leaving that book and leaving that world. It is accidental pregnancy, which I haven't read a lot of accidental pregnancy. I don't think I hate accidental pregnancy. I loved Reckless, and I also loved Out on a Limb. And I don't think I've read any other pregnancy books unless I've totally blocked out the accidental pregnancy trope apart from these two books. However, they have a one night stand, and they're both pretty much emotionally unavailable, and it turns out that she gets pregnant, and she's always wanted kids, even if it isn't with a partner. Also, both of our main characters have limb differences, and the author herself has a limb difference, if I'm not mistaken, the exact same limb difference that the main character in the book has. And just that added layer of depth, having been written by someone who could only write it in the way that they wrote it, having experienced it, and the nuanced conversations and the experience of becoming a mother when everybody says you're gonna have your hands full, but not having the exact same limbs as somebody else. It was just so beautifully written and such a warm hug and so cozy, and just there wasn't any third act situation that makes you want to like jab your eyes out. It just felt like realistic. It was also based in like my home province and like Southern Ontario, so just the way that she described the seasons and stuff was just like spot on, like gray, ugly. it should be warm, but it's not. And I loved it because the characters were still living their lives and doing their damn thing. And I was like, that's what you have to do. You have to find the good in the bad. You know what I mean? You have to find the good in the 8-degree weather for 6 months straight. You know, that season between like winter and summer, because we don't really get a spring or a fall where it's like 8 degrees every single day. And that was when this book took place for a lot of the time. And I was like, I relate to this in a lot of big ways. I'm talking about this ending of this book for far too long. However, I related to it a lot. I felt so full leaving that book. It just like felt like a realistic fairy tale story, which is, I feel like, what a warm hug is in book form. A one and done fantasy book or duology, I'm going to have to recommend Gifted and Talented, because it feels like you went through like an anthology of stories, like a full series. Is an anthology short stories? What's an anthology? Why did I say it if I don't know what it means? Should I know what it means? It's multiple books. It has to be. I'm going to go with series, but it feels like you read like a series of stories because there's so many interesting point of views. However, it's just like this self-contained, not overly long. I do think Gifted and Talented leans more on like the Atlas 6 side of Olive Blake's writing and story construction. However, it was so interesting, so different than anything else that I have ever read. Olivia Blake just does such a beautiful job every single time. And the way that that book felt so incredibly modern and of the times and interesting and retrospective, it also just had like so many interesting takes on what is going on in the world and the state of the world and like where we're headed, while also being like funny and having these incredibly unlikable characters that you just like kind of end up enjoying being in the heads up. We have 3 siblings and their fathers recently passed away, and he's like the pioneer of this world's internet, which is Magitech. So it's all founded by magic, and all 3 of the kids have like a mysterious magical quality to them, and they're all obviously prodigies. So the conversation is on who's going to inherit the company, and also like, do we even really want to inherit the company? And like, did dad really even love us? But also like, there's a lot of really deep-seated issues going on, and you're in the characters' heads and they're saying the things that you think as a human, like thoughts that you might have as a human, but like are the parts that get left out of a book. And it's just, it's so cool. It's such an interesting concept, and the way that she executes it is so modern, but will stand the test of time, is the best way I can explain that book. And it's one and done. Although I'm sad about the fact, because I would love to read more, even though the story, it ends and it's completed and it should be there, you know? Perfectly paced. A book for a middle school teen wolf lover who is an adult now. I do have to say, this is again maybe recency bias, City of Gods and Monsters. Yeah, City of Gods and Monsters, because it's kind of like a more adult version. Like Darien Castle is kind of giving the energy of the way that Teen Wolf is shot. I said extremely specific. I wasn't going to say they were all going to make sense to everybody, okay? The dark, dreary night scenes of Teen Wolf, which are like the only parts of Teen Wolf that are really still stuck in my head. I don't know about anybody else, but I have a vivid memory of a scene going on in a bus, and that's like the only visual representation I have of that show still in my head. That's kind of what the City of Gods and Monsters felt like the entire way through. There's like no werewolves or anything, right? But there's a lot of other things. Honestly, the Darkseers, which is what Darien Castle, the male main character, that's perfect. He's perfect. That's what he is, and it's giving the same energy as like a teenage heartthrob werewolf situation. Something that will make me scream and throw the book against the wall. I have to say Fearless, because I did scream and throw my book against the wall. I didn't throw my book. I thought about it, but I did I slammed it down in my lap, which I don't do that very often, but I was really very fed up with the tears that were coming out of my eyes. However, that is the last book in a series, so it's kind of a commitment. So if you're not looking for that and you're looking for the first book in a 3-book series, I would say Daughter of No Worlds, because it doesn't do what you think it's going to do. I actually got a DM from one of you the other day saying like, I'm a little bit in and I have no idea what's going on. And I sent a message back being like, I also didn't really know what was going on until the halfway point, and you kind of just are going along for the ride, and then you get it and it clicks and you're like, no, it was so much fun not knowing. The male main character's origin story was the most painful I think I've ever read. Yeah. No, so fucked up. Really genuinely so fucked up, but in a way that made me feel a lot of things, and it made me want to throw my book at the wall so many times. And also the chapters that we get, I don't want to say anything about it. However, Max and Tasana, I think they'll probably be my favorite romantasy book couple, like by the time I finish that 3rd book, you know? This might be random and may not fit the idea. Anything fits the idea. That's the point. Literally anything. You're spot on with this. A book for lovers of thunderstorms. Olivia Blake, more specifically, Masters of Death and Atlas 6. No further comment. Those books feel like it's raining outside. I don't want to read those books when it's shiny and sunny. When is it shiny outside? I don't want to read those books when it's sunny and bright and fun. Well, I mean, read them regardless. The idea of reading in like a dark, dreary library with like rain falling down, Masters of Death, because it's a fun twist on a book that will make you question the meaning of life. And it makes you feel like Olivia Blake has all the answers to the universe. I think she might be putting like little bits of them in her books, but I'm really grateful to be getting those bits. I feel like I'm not big-brained enough to get it all at once. So if she does have the answers, I will be reading everything until I can piece it together, which it'll probably take me longer than the average person, because again, not very big brain. However, the Atlas Six especially, it's set in a dark, dreary library. It's about a magical library that literally controls the entire world. And the way that she writes in that book, 6 incredibly unlikable characters. Yeah, but you love them in the end. But not in a way that is like, I love you so much, you're my favorite character ever. Like, you love like Kai or like Julian hates or Magnolia. You love them in like a, you're so fucking human, redeemable kind of way. You know, like I don't know what choices I would have made, but I can't even imagine being in that situation. And just the dark, dreary thunderstorm, thunder, lightning going on in the background sounds like the perfect setting. I will say that you have to commit. They're long and they're very convoluted, and you might not always know what is going on, but you'll leave with something for sure. A YA book that feels like YA for a fun time. Six of Crows, the heist book to end all heist books. That was one of the most beautifully crafted stories I'd ever seen. It connected. It made so much sense. It was complex. It was beautiful. The point of views that we get. The thing about Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom that makes it so good is that you'll have a question about a character's motivations, and then in the next chapter that character will get a point of view and they'll explain the reason that they got there, or the thing that happened in their childhood, or the reason they are thinking that way, or just what generally they are thinking that has made them decide to make this action. It's so beautifully crafted, and I feel like because it's very much so a heist story, like there's not a lot of like romance kind of situation going on, and it's in this fantasy world that has always been based in a YA world. Like, you just don't even notice it's YA. It's just beautifully executed in this world that is, I guess, YA friendly. I will also never forget when I was talking about the Six of Crows series, and I said, I don't know, there was like 6 of them maybe, and someone commented and said, yeah, they were from the Crow Club and there were 6 of them, that's why it's called Six of Crows. And my mom called me and went, you're dumb, after reading that comment. And I was like, yeah, I never connected. Does everybody pay attention to the title of books? Because I never pay attention to what the title is, ever. Something that will make me sob one minute and laugh the next. The 7-Year Slip is the best thing I can think of, because I don't read a lot of books that make me laugh. But the romance and the story in the 7-Year Slip, I feel like I was like, and then like, every 30 seconds. So let me try and explain this book, even though I'm really bad at explaining it every single time I try. Clementine's aunt has passed away, and they were like best friends. Like, she is heartbroken, does not know how to move on in her life, but her aunt has left her apartment in New York City, and like, you can't really pass up on that opportunity to not really pay rent, you know what I mean? So she moves in, and her aunt has always said the apartment is magical and it has slipped through time. It'll slip through time. And she was like, okay, well, none of your other magical stories have been true, so this one can't be true, because obviously. But then she gets there, and there maybe is a little bit of a slip 7 years through time, and there maybe is the best male main character. I say that about a lot of people, but when I'm thinking about the books in the moment, they were the best male main character in the moment, and I still feel very strongly for them. And that's what I'll leave you with. Books to read in a cozy downtown coffee shop. See, now this is what I meant by specific, because the recommendation I would give you for reading in a cozy bookshop, say by a cottage, is very different than what I would give you in downtown Toronto. You know what I mean? A Sea of Unspoken Things by June Farrow. Wrong. A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young, and The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. Both by Adrienne Young. June Farrow is the main character in The Unmaking of June Farrow. Kind of mysterious, pretty quick, whimsical, magical realism-esque stories. And they were both like medium amazing for me, like not my favorite thing ever. Like, they're not like immaculate 5-star reads. I will go back one day and read The Unmaking of June Farrow once I forget like the big twist and I can like really experience the emotions of it, because I just like was not in the right place to read it. And then A Sea of Unspoken Things, it was like a mystery that was written through like the lens and the writing style of like a literary fiction author, which just like, it kind of just feels like the perfect book to read in a city coffee shop. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be like 100% clocked in. You're not going to like sob randomly on a random page. You're like comfortable to read it out in public, but they're very impactful and well written and beautiful and just like a great reading experience, especially for when it's raining outside in a coffee shop in a downtown area. Books to read specifically lying on the beach. Hotel Nantucket. It's like granny gossip core. I remember Larry Reeds made a video reading Hotel Nantucket like right before I read it, and she was like, the grannies are onto something. And I still stand by the fact that the grannies are onto something, and Larry was so right making that connection. You're basically in like a bunch of point of views, and it's kind of just like this Nantucket small town gossip. You meet a bunch of characters that are just like fun and likable and do weird things, and you're solving this like mystery. Basically, they've renovated and reopened this new hotel, and it's like a historical hotel in Nantucket, and it's Hotel Nantucket. It's like this big, beautiful hotel, and we're in the point of view of the new general manager. We're in the point of view of a ghost that lives in the hotel. We're in the point of view of people that are working at the hotel. We're dealing with some drama. We're dealing with divorce and marriage and friendship. It was such a fun book. Well, I also feel like I took a lot out of it. Like, I felt a lot for female friendships after reading that book, and just romantic relationships and just very normal things, which is kind of fun to read about, while also specifically lying on the beach. A book that feels like The Color Maroon. Now, like I said, 100% up for interpretation. I did not let myself think very hard about this one. I wrote it down and I immediately looked at my bookshelves and went that one and that one. And the two that I thought of were Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. That book might be a little bit more like dark burgundy blood red. You know what I mean? Like dried blood colored. I feel like that says something about the book that I didn't mean to say. Maybe that book, and also A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. That book is maroon in my head. Maybe because the covers are kind of like maroon. A book that feels like how vanilla smells. Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. I don't have an explanation. I could try, but I doubt it would make any sense. However, if you're looking for a beautifully written, pretty witty, quick, fast, one-liner-esque romance, anything by Annabelle Monaghan is gonna do it. I also think one thing about Annabelle Monaghan that is so cool is I feel like her stories are pretty realistic, pretty normal. Like they're normally dealing with like fairly normal kind of characters. Like it feels like something that can actually happen, but each book deals with something very differently. So I feel like the book you connect with the most will be different for every single person. Like for me, it was Nora Goes Off Script, which was the last one I read, and I think was her first book. But I felt so much for that book. But if you hate miscommunication, that one wouldn't be your favorite. So I think it's so up for interpretation. But however, vanilla summer romance. Relationships that make me feel like Wildest Dreams, 1989, angry live version. Magnolia Parks. I cannot elaborate. Book recs for people that love to be emotional about the small moments. Say or Remember Me. I said when I was reading that, I think this is only hitting quite as hard as it's hitting because I am such a sentimental, emotional about the teeny tiny moments, nuanced details, the you thought of me moments of life. That's why that book, like literally painful. I don't think I could reread that book because of how much I feel for it. And for the, like, just the way that she describes memories and sentiments and losing memories and trying to make new ones. Don't cry. We can't cry talking about it. And also yours truly, because the way that Brianna writes letters, it's easier for him. That's a small moment. Everything about that book was small moments that made up just like a perfect story where the FMC is badass, but not like annoyingly so. Daughter of No Worlds. She is so badass. Tasana is unreal. She is willing to do anything to save people. She is like one of the best people that I've ever read about. However, she's still squeamish at the sight of blood, which I love. I love a female main character that is like, I will kill anybody to get there. I'm morally black. I love all of that. Do not get me wrong. However, sometimes it's nice to read about a female main character that's badass, like truly badass, but also is like me and is like, I'd rather not see blood and be violent. You know what I mean? But I mean, she does it to get where she needs to go. So badass, but also like a little bit soft on the inside. A thriller that will have me not skipping to the end because the clues are so good throughout. Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. It took so many twists I wasn't expecting. Basically, our female main character doesn't know if she killed her best friend. She's like, I might have. I have no recollection of anything that happened. I know the whole town thinks I did it, but like I might have done it. The evidence doesn't point to me necessarily, but I might have done it. And this guy who has a podcast comes and he's like, I'm trying to solve this case. And she's like, honestly, let's figure it out. Yeah, I'll help you. Why don't we just do it together? Because like, if it was me, I want to go to jail because I love my best friend. I can't imagine that I fucking did that. It doesn't do what you think it's going to do at all. It's so good. It was so good. A book that feels like a post-beach shower and pre-dinner drinks in the summer. This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. More set and setting than anything else. Like it takes place in Prince Edward Island, which is like our Nantucket. Or at least mine, like where I grew up going all of the time. And just the set and setting of it all and the like sweet, fun romance of it all. Like it just feels like your friend just met someone at the beach and she's going to go on a first date with him and get a drink. And you guys are on the beach. That's kind of the best way I can explain it. That's the way that book feels. A single mom or parent book that'll make me cry that's not The Last Letter, Wild Eyes, and Wild Side. Wild Love didn't make me cry. I'm not a huge Wild Love person. However, again, like Annabelle Monaghan, Elsie Silver, you're dealing with different tropes every single time, different characters that have gone through different things. So I think people connect to different ones. And both Wild Eyes and Wild Side, I really connected to. The emotional aspect of Wild Side, Reese's family trauma and him having not really ever known his family and not had family because he was in the foster system and then being thrust upon like being a parent. That was an emotional experience I didn't know I was going to need. I couldn't look past the wrestling of it all sometimes. You know what I mean? Like he put the mask on and I was like, no, I don't love it. However, Wild Eyes, she sang in it and it didn't ick me out. 5 stars. Loved it so much. Like one of my favorite romances I've ever read. Both of them have such emotional aspects that you don't expect because they're just cowboys with filthy mouths. I guess not cowboys. You can't say that all the Elsie Silver books are cowboy romances, small town, country romances. And obviously the Wild Side wrestler's not a cowboy. However, they did both make me cry. So do with that information what you will. And those were some extremely specific book recommendations. Let me know if you guys saw the prompts and were like 100% you hit it spot on. I thought of the exact same book, or if you're going to be adding any of these to your TBR because maybe there was an extremely specific thing that you were like, I've been looking for a book that feels like what vanilla smells like. I'm going to try that one. Although again, totally up for interpretation. I'm not held liable for any of these. I have to say that for legal reasons. I'm kidding, obviously. Imagine someone took legal action on me because I recommended a book they didn't like. That would be too far. Because again, this is totally up for interpretation. Or if you saw a prompt and were like, I thought of a completely different book and it's this book, let me know. Because again, up for interpretation. And I want to see what your interpretations are. Because that's the whole point of why we're here, to find cool books for each other. The way that you guys have given me extremely specific book recommendations and I've read them and loved them, I hope I can do the same. And it's just a community of extremely specific book recommendations. So I feel like that's why I was put on this earth. We have completed our task for the day. A huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to head down below because I have everything linked. And the first 500 people will be getting a full month of Skillshare for free. And now that me and you are finished here, I will definitely be running my little butt off to go and finish that productivity class so that I can get this video up to you in a time that makes sense. Because if not, I'll get distracted and I'll read something and you'll never see this video. So, and if you guys want to see another one of these, leave extremely specific book recommendation prompts you guys want me to do next time. Because I feel like we might be doing this indefinitely. They're my favorite videos to film. I just feel like they're so fun. Also, let me know if you liked the podcast at all. Was it fun? I also may or may not have gotten a new camera. So let me know if it looks different. I'm a little bit nervous looking at it right here in front of me. However, let me know if you liked it. And on that note, if I added 11 books to your TBR, I'm so sorry, but I'm actually not. You're welcome. And I hope to see you in the next one. Love you. Bye. I feel like I really need to emphasize that every single one of these prompts was so up for interpretation. If you took it a completely different direction, I get that. Because they're extremely specific. You could really go anywhere.